Good news, everyone!
I'm not joking, we actually now know some stuff about Tanaan Jungle world content and, really importantly, that patch 6.2 will not be the final patch of Warlords of Draenor. I am really happy to hear this. After hearing Tom Chilton talk about yearly expansions and maybe Farallon not being a thing, I think some of us got a bit scared about what that might entail, but we've now got some solid confirmation from Ian Hazzikostas himself that they are doing some more stuff with Tanaan that's not in the PTR yet, which I kind of assumed anyway based on there being the Vault of the Elements just sitting there, and that there will be more than just patch 6.2, which is something that we actually didn't know. But first, a quick word about yesterday's video. It garnered quite the response, and I think the GIF that I'm probably going to put up on the screen sums up my reaction to that stuff pretty well. Loads of people who seem to be really ticked off by it, and seem to think that I was strongly in one camp or the other, when, in fact, that's not the case, and, if I'm honest, most of the people who seem to be really ticked off, quite clearly from what they said, had not watched more than the first 2 minutes of the video. Usually, people seem to think that I wanted flying back, and that I was just, some blizzard sheep, or I was crying or whatever. I don't know, it was all quite lovely. It seems like a lot of conclusions though were jumped to before actually watching the video, so to be clear, I like no flying and I think world content can be better because of it. My overall point was that I think the best balance for everyone concerned is to allow Draenor flying in patch 6.2 and then keep Tanaan Jungle with no flying, and then to just do things like that for future expansions. Actually, Asmongold had a great suggestion, basically a meta achievement for doing exploration content that would unlock account-wide flying. I thought that was a pretty nifty idea. Anyway, let's agree not to talk about flying for quite a bit, because it's always, it's not the most fun, and let's cover this probably really brilliant news. So first up, we have Tanaan Jungle. In the recent Polygon interview, lead designer Ian Hazzikostas told us, quote, "We are adding a couple of reputations for players to earn from multiple factions in the zone." I am so bloody happy to hear this. Really, I have enjoyed reputation content a lot in the past, and seeing them add something in this patch is really heartening to see. Tanaan with only Apexis missions would have been really lackluster, and hopefully these reputations can do a lot to just bulk up the zone and give us some more stuff to do. We don't know a great deal about the specifics, but here's what he said. As far as the nature of the content goes, here's the quote: "You can gain those by defending certain areas that come under attack or going out and hunting rare creatures." This is actually sounding similar enough to the idea that I proposed a while back for what I would do with the Shatari defense faction. I think the rare hunting can be quite a bit of fun, so having the reputations here support that is definitely great, and also having those world events is, I think, an excellent step. Hopefully they're going to be nice and varied, and I suppose on the topic of flying, if there's world events in the zone, that really suits you being on the ground, and I think that's kind of cool. I wouldn't mind having a few quests though for these factions, perhaps some dailies, or maybe even story quests that unlock as you get certain amounts of reputation, a bit like with 5.1, but maybe a cut down version, because obviously not every single reputation can have a full-on, storyline associated with it in a content patch. At the very least, it sounds like this is going to be a very good upgrade on what we got in patch 6.0, and that definitely makes me quite happy. In terms of the rewards, Ian said that you can unlock cosmetic upgrades, some player power items, and some convenient items. There's a wide variety of things. So that actually does sound quite good. I can imagine some people being a bit peeved off initially with the idea of player power items, but, it seems like this rep content can be tackled at the same time as the other bits of Tanaan Jungle. Plus, since it isn't the start of the expansion, I don't think it's really going to be much of a concern for raiders or the sort of people who would feel like, oh, because there's power, this rep is mandatory. So that's good, and hopefully they are fun player power items. There are also going to be cosmetic rewards. We don't know what they are, but I'm glad to see that. They have set the precedent of having transmog sets that are cosmetic, purely cosmetic, not bits of gear. So I think adding a bunch of them would be a really great inclusion here. Also, him saying that there will be convenience items is good, because there's actually potential for those to be quite a bit of fun. I think a good example is actually Maviana's Feather and just some other little things like that. They can feel good, so hopefully that stuff's well designed. Before hearing this, I honestly was a bit worried about Tanaan Jungle, and maybe that it would just be Apexis missions and a few rares, but you know, in the videos that I've done on the jungle, I've always mentioned the Vault of the Elements and what could be going on there, and it seems like that's what these reps are going to be. Maybe there'll be a few factions within the Vault of Elements, maybe for the different kinds of elements, or maybe that will be one of multiple factions. We'll just have to wait and see. This will be coming in a PTR build soon enough, so as soon as that happens, I will bring you all of the details on it. Moving on though, let's talk about there being more than just patch 6.2 in the future of Warlords of Draenor. So in the interview, he pretty much confirmed that 6.2 won't be the final patch of this expansion. I'm very, very, very happy to hear this, as I think the world of Draenor was just teeming with potential, and based off what Tom Chilton said in the past at that Gamescom interview, it sounded like we were going to be getting a yearly expansion with only 2 raid tiers. I've got to wonder if delaying the Warcraft movie from December to June 2016 has resulted in them deciding to add another raid tier. After all, they have just gained another 6 months if you think about it that way. Having the next expansion launch with the movie is, of course, a tremendous growth opportunity for the franchise, so I guess it does make sense trying to get that stuff to all line up. Ian said that, quote, "We've got plenty more story to be told after this," when the Polygon interviewer asked if patch 6.2 would be the final content update for the expansion. And the Polygon writer specifically said, quote, "big content update." That's what he asked. Is this the final big content update? So I'm taking Ian's response to essentially mean that there will be another major content patch, i.e. the likes of patch 5.2, patch 5.4, and then of course the upcoming 6.2. We also have seen some data mined PvP Season 3 Warlords of Draenor stuff, so overall it does look like we are going to have another raid tier patch. Hell, Gul'dan isn't even in the Hellfire Citadel raid, though it does seem a bit odd that we're going to get our legendary ring in not the final patch of the expansion. I suppose what Blizzard will do is give us the legendary ring and then just allow us to upgrade the item level as we move on in the upcoming patch, I suppose. Now, there was a bit of a worry based on what Blizzard themselves said that they would just rush through WoD, as Tom Chilton actually suggested. Now that they're taking time, it really does give them an opportunity to just give us the full vision of Draenor. Now, if you aren't aware, Farallon is the place that turned into Netherstorm, and back in the Warlords of Draenor Alpha, it was there on the world map, but they removed it because they weren't sure if it would make it into one of the patches. Back then, having WoD's last 2 tiers would essentially mean that the next expansion, the one after Warlords, would have came out during the Warcraft movie's old release date, which was December 2015. So Warlords of Draenor lasting precisely a year would have meant that it would have coincided with the actual movie coming out. Now that, of course, they've got a bit more time, maybe they can squeeze in Farallon after all. Now, in our timeline, what happened in the zone of Farallon is that it was just blasted to pieces when Ner'zhul unleashed the portals, and then later the Naaru arrived in the zone via Tempest Keep. The keep was then, after a while, taken by the Blood Elves, and later on one of its satellite structures, the Exodar, was taken by the fleeing Draenei, and that's how they actually got to Azeroth. Now imagine this, the final patch of Warlords of Draenor being the Naaru arriving, and all of us combined fighting the Burning Legion throughout one massively sort of partially beautiful, partially defiled zone. I think it would be really cool, and in terms of forces that are already in that zone, well, I'm pretty sure there's a group of Draenei there, and we know for certain that it is actually the home of the Laughing Skull Orcs. So we will have 2 factions there to pretty much introduce players to the zone. Hell, having a neutral hub owned by the Naaru inside Farallon, where both Horde and Alliance players could meet, would be a really, really, really cool thing. I know I'm kind of lower nerding out over the potential of this place, but it was one of the things that I was looking forward to the most in this expansion. Actually, one of the things which is a bit of a pre-Warlords of Draenor memory for me was actually pre-BlizzCon 2015 when I was on Final Boss, or 2014 even, I was on their podcast with Noble, and we both kind of had a shared geek out about the idea of Farallon, Naaru, and all this badass stuff happening, and how cool it could be. So it's definitely something that I really like the idea of. Of course, though, we don't know 100% whether this patch or any of the patches that could potentially happen within Warlords of Draenor will include this zone, but I'm just kind of hoping for the best right now because it does seem like the logical place to expand to. Sure, they could move to the Ogre Empire or some Arakoa stuff, but we've kind of dealt with a lot of the Arakoa story, and spoilers, there'll be a little bit of that going on in 6.2, and come on, we've already fought ogres, we've already had our ogre raids, so I would say something cool in Farallon would be one of our best case scenarios. Now, Ian did mention that one major goal has been to reduce the time between expansions. Well, with the team being larger and them constantly saying that that's a goal, I think it actually could happen. Look, as cynical as we all can be at times, these people have actually got to be working on something. It's pretty clear they weren't working in patch 6.1, but it does seem like what they are actually doing is working significantly ahead on the next expansion, and that's something that Blizzard have been saying many times, is that they are ramping up the development of future expansions far earlier. Maybe there was a bit of a teething period there where that hurt Warlords of Draenor. I think it certainly seems like that was the case, but with all that stuff in mind, I think it is possible that patch 6.2 could come out in June, then 6.4, or just the next major raid patch, could come out in December, and then 7.0, so the next expansion, could come out in summer 2016 to roughly coincide with the Warcraft movie. That's a timeline that I think does make sense from both mainly from a business perspective, but I think it's a timeline that also would offer quite a lot to consumers. We would get 6.2, we'd get a really badass patch, hopefully in Farallon, then we'd get a movie and a new expansion. I'd say that works out pretty well. So there you have it, some really good stuff coming from Blizzard. All I'd say is that hopefully the reputations are of a good quality, and frankly, I would kinda do almost anything to be fighting the Burning Legion in Farallon with the Naru. That would be pretty fucking badass. Anyway, that's it for the video, everyone. Thanks for watching. Let me know what your thoughts are, and especially, what sort of stuff do you think could be going on in Farallon with the Naru? It's certainly something with a lot of potential. That's it for the video. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.